Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Taylor here with the first episode of the Bonfire Briefing Podcast. Today I'm talking to UFC Bantamweight prospect Julio Arce. He's 5-3 in the UFC and coming off an impressive win at UFC 273 over Daniel Santos. In addition to his most recent win, we talked about his journey to the UFC, last weekend's UFC 274 pay-per-view, and what his fight plans are for the remainder of the year. Hope you enjoy the conversation. All right, there we go. Julio Arce, welcome to the show.
What's going on, my man? How you been?
Man, I've been pretty good. How about yourself?
Dude, I'm still, watching my last fight and just like reliving the moment, but just like nonstop observing.
Yeah, man, I definitely want to get into that because your win over Santos was incredible. I mean, if people are looking for, a super impressive display of boxing in the UFC, I mean, I think that fight is a great example of that. And not just your boxing either, too. Your kicks, man. You don't. You set them up and everything, but you don't really wind up to them. It's just, you throw that thing and it's right there at its target. It's super impressive. I know I retweeted that kick that you knocked out Erosa with.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the
Yeah.
smoothest head kicks I've ever seen.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Do you attribute that to your training at your current gym?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been training on the Tiger Showmans now for 21 years.
Damn.
Yeah, I've been there from the start to where I am now, and we started like a we started with like a karate base, and then we adapted to the ever changing mixed martial arts. And like I was taught like a lot of look, we used to be like with the kind of the discipline of karate, but we started going to the world of MMA. And the Showmans, they did that. They didn't just like say, okay, this is the only way we're gonna do it, and this is the only way that works. No, they're like, nah, we're gonna add on to this. We're doing jujitsu in there. We're doing this, and dude, the amount of things I've learned, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. You've been at the same gym for 21 years. I do want to talk about your most recent win, but I'd love to hear about, how you got into MMA, what the journey to the UFC has been like, everything like that. If you could give me a little overview.
Of course. So like when I was little, I kind of went through like the stages of life of being a skinny kid, and when I came to live in New York, you know, I kept thinking I was like, yeah, I can eat whatever I want, and I became a fat kid, an overweight fat kid, and of course, dealing with the ruthlessness of kids in school, and I couldn't really find. I was trying to find like other activities that I would like fit in, but it's like I wanted something that I would hold myself accountable for. Something would be like mine, like that I it's like my journey.
Right.
So my oldest sister Katz brought me into Tiger Showman's, and from there on, I fell in love with it ever since, and I was just like, oh, this is what I love to do. And then next thing you know, like I was losing weight, I was doing jujitsu competitions, um, our own in-house tournaments where we all the Tiger Showman's locations gather and have all their students, kickbox and do jujitsu. And then from there, when I finally, turned 18, I was able to start fighting. And here I am now.
Right. Is about 18? Is that when you started doing like the Golden Gloves, getting into that? Because I know you were the 2011 champion there. When did you start, getting into that kind of competing?
So when I turned 18, I finally was able to do. I actually started my career off in amateur MMA, which
Mm,
was pretty cool. And then my coaches were like, "All right, we gotta." It's like you done jiu-jitsu tournaments, you're doing MMA where you're kind of displaying your jiu-jitsu. We want to see you display more of your striking.
mhm,
Then they had me do kickboxing fights, amateur kickboxing fights. Then I think I racked up. I was 6-0 as an amateur in amateur MMA, and
mhm,
then I was 5-0 as an amateur kickboxing, and then I got my first loss in kickboxing, and they wanted me to trust my hands more, and
mm.
that's where like you're doing the Golden Gloves. So I'm like, all right, it's like I didn't want to do it at first. I was just like, I don't want to do boxing, and like a kid filled with excuses sometimes. Where you're just like, I don't, I like doing MMA. I like doing everything. I didn't want to do just boxing,
Right.
but it actually turned out to be the best experience I could ever have because I fought every week. And next thing you know, I went from fighting in like these little school gyms to fighting in Madison Square Garden, which was a huge, huge accomplishment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I bet that had to be crazy. What is it like fighting in Madison Square Garden compared to some of the other venues that you fought at before?
Dude, it's unreal. It's unreal because I mean, look, it's the mecca of boxing, and I got to
Right.
do that, and it was my first boxing experience. I'm going people who've been doing boxing since they were little, and I'm like doing practicing every discipline, but people who just specifically um, do just boxing, and I was getting in there and I was beating these boxers, and it felt great because it's like all the hard work is really coming into play. Like I had a mission. I wanted to go professional. So if winning the Golden Gloves was my way to becoming a pro, it's like then I was making sure I got that done.
Right. I can't remember who it was. There was I think it was an MMA fighter, UFC fighter who said something. I think maybe last week about like the crowd in Madison Square Garden is so loud that they couldn't even hear their coaches giving them advice.
Oh my god.
You know.
Like it is like that, but I think everybody's different. For me, the moment I fought at the Gardens, like, all right, you just gotta focus on just one voice. Focus on one voice. That's it. And that's what I did, even through the crowd, through the sound of the crowd.
Okay, so you were able to kind of tune everything else out and just kind of focus on the one person that you really needed to get through to you in that moment.
Absolutely.
So how did you go from fighting in a ring of combat to getting your way on Dana White's Contender Series?
So, the journey to the UFC was also, it was it was filled with a couple of like little upsets here and there because I started, once I became I turned professional, I was kind of climbing up, and then as I was I think 7-0, I got my first loss. I was on the radar for to get picked up by the UFC, and I got offered a early fight, like even earlier in my career. I think I was 3-0 to fight. I forgot who he is in the bantamweight division. I don't think he's around any longer, but it was a fight in Canada, and my coach was like, it's like, no, it's like we don't want to put you under the bright lights too soon. You need to build. You need to have time. It's like you're just like we're not going in there. And I thank my coaches because they watched out for me in that regard. Because in my mind, I'm like, yo, it's like this is my time.
Right.
But they're like, nah, you don't want to get in there under the bright lights where you know it's like you have to deal with the nerves, you have to deal with the crowds. It's like you're not ready for that. Even though you are, then like trust us. It's like just wait. And I was like, all right. It's like kept fighting, and then I got my first loss under Brian Kelleher,
Mhm.
and then when we were supposed to fight again, I got hurt, and he ended up fighting, and he was in I think it was Dana White's looking for a fight, and
Oh,
that
yeah.
night he knocked somebody out with a spinning back fist, and he got picked up.
Mm.
So in my mind, I'm like, damn, I lost that opportunity. That's twice. But I'm like, forget it, man. It's like, I'm gonna keep training, keep doing my thing. Um, we did the rematch, and look, he tapped me out. Well, actually, he got picked up after we fought the second time, and then then he got the spinning back fist knockout. Um, and then I'm like, oh, let me move to 45, and I moved to 45, got the titles there. And then there was another Dana a contender looking for a fight.
Mhm.
And that fight, I don't know why I put a lot of stress on myself, and I didn't fight the way I normally fought. And I was like what the fuck, man? It's like it was just one of these like fights that I had a gritty opponent, but like I think I just fought with like pressure on my shoulders. Like this is like a young fighter mentality. And then it's like the fight was just like boring. Like I won the fight, but it was one of those. It's like that somebody else got picked over me because I didn't fight the way I wanted to fight.
Right.
And so then I just kept fighting. I was like, all right, let's keep going. Let's defend this title. And then I got an opportunity at the Contender Series. And when I went there, I fought Peter Pettis, and I TKO'd him the second round. I hit him with like a barrage, like I hit him like a 30-piece combo. And so it's like when you're in a video game and you're just button smashing, just like pressing and just trying to get this done. But
Right.
I'm thinking, I'm like, yo, that was more than enough to earn my shot, and I still didn't get it. And it was at that point where you look at it and you're like, it was like a little bit of like I left my mark. I showed him that like what I can do. But then
Mhm.
again, it was like heartbreaking because like I'm like, damn, it's like I still didn't get in, and I still like it's like was like what was it going to take for me to finally be able to get a call from these guys. And after that, like it was a little like saddening. I felt a little bit like shit. But then I'm like, you know what? Like in my mind, I'm like, it's like my time will come. It's like my journey's different than everybody else's. And I did a kickboxing fight in Glory and knocked the guy out. And
Mhm.
then I just kept training. And then next thing you know, it was the first time Stipe fought Francis Ngannou, and I got a short notice call to fight Dan Ige because I think it was Charles Arosa. No, not Charles Arosa. Is it Charles
Uh,
Arosa?
yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah,
Charles
Charles
Rosa.
Arosa. He got hurt, and they need a replacement. So my teammates, management just started going on Twitter, and my teammate Shane was like, "Yo, this guy's ready. He's been ready for it." And then they gave me that fight, and next thing you know, I was fighting Ige in UFC 220, and I beat him. And look, he's a top contender now. So, and now here we are, man.
Yeah. No, that is it's a really crazy journey to the UFC. And I think the consistency in your mindset is is awesome. You know, despite the different hurdles and challenges that you had, you knew that you would get your shot in the UFC one day if you kept, you know, training and fighting. And you know, you might have hit a couple of roadblocks on the way there, but you know, you did eventually get that shot. And when you finally got it, did you finally feel like, yes, this is my moment, I'm going to go out there and you know, make the best of it, no matter what?
Absolutely. Like everything felt right. And I was like, I'm like, this is the moment I was waiting for. Like the other moments, maybe it was too soon, but this is the right moment.
Yeah, and Dan Ige, like you said, I mean, he's a top contender guy now. I mean, that's a hell of a guy to have to make your UFC debut against.
I
Uh,
know,
how was your training whenever you were preparing? It was short notice, right? How much notice did you have in fighting him?
it was 2 weeks, but I was relentless in the gym, So like I was there even when like I'm there even when I'm not getting ready for a fight. I want to stay in shape. I want to stay ready for anything.
Right,
So
stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
exactly.
Yeah. What so you know when you're you know when you have a full fight camp, you know you have a lot of time to get in all the training that you need to get prepared. And you know, obviously there's a significant advantage in you know being able to go through a full fight camp versus having to fight Dan Ige on 2 weeks notice. You know, I mean, how did you guys cram in all that you needed to do in that 2 weeks? I mean, that's such a short amount of time to have to fight somebody like that and to come out, you know, successful. I mean, to beat him.
Yeah, well, like we didn't really cram for it. Like even like I fought in when I fought in Glory, like I stayed in the gym. Like I stayed training as if there was a fight for me.
Right.
Even before we heard that Charles Rosa had gotten hurt and they needed looking for an opponent. My other teammates, they had their fights, so I was in there training with them, doing hard sparring rounds, everything that has to get done, like my conditioning, all that. It, like I didn't take the foot off the gas pedal. I was just like, yo, let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. So then by the time they gave me this short notice fight, I was already in the fight shape that I needed to be in.
Right. And you know, for the first, I think your first 6 fights or so in the UFC, you were fighting at featherweight. But you know, here recently, you've dropped back down to bantamweight and have been fighting there. And you've held titles in both weight classes. I'm wondering, you know, what differences do you notice in how you fight, how you train, how you prepare at 145 versus 135?
You know what? For when I decided to make my move to 45, when I was in the regional circuit, I made that jump because I didn't want to deal with like I didn't have a nutritionist like I have now to help me with my weight cut. Um, and it wasn't, and I can say it, like it wasn't as structured as I should have been with my weight cuts, which
Hmm.
made me do the move to 145. And then when I got into the UFC, like these guys are just so much bigger than me.
Right.
Like, like if you see me, like you can clearly see I'm a 35er, not a 45er. So like I'm in there with dudes who are walking around much heavier, dropping to 145. Now look, I held my own, but if I wanted like any type of championship trajectory, like it was at 35, not at 45.
Right. Yeah. And I think you can definitely see that throughout your fights in the UFC. I mean, you know, in your return to bantamweight in the UFC, you know, you TKO'd Andre Ewell, and you know, your most recent win over Daniel Santos, man, you looked super impressive. Like I said, I mean, everything, dude. Your jab, you know, using that to stifle a lot of his offense. Your body shots were nasty. You know, in the second round, you really started picking him apart with those body shots, and you know he was coming at you with some serious power, but you were able to just kind of, you know, stick to the game plan, pick him apart with your boxing. I mean, it was just it was a super impressive victory, man. How did you feel after that fight? You know,
Dude, I walked away from that fight and I'm just like, the fact that I used a jab around kicking a left hand most of the time. And I'm like, this is the way it has to be done. I'm like, I just felt I was in the zone. Like I felt, I'm like, this was the way I normally fought. This is my fun way of fighting. And I'm like, it's like, and I should have been fighting like this it's like, there's just points in your training, even during like your fights where it's like you're fighting, but you don't fight like your usual self. And I wasn't me. And I'm like, and I paid for it by losing like split decisions. And then in this fight, I felt like it just felt complete. Well, partially complete. I need to now start doing more takedowns and involve more wrestling in there. But like, I'm like, I wanted to see the look of frustration in his face when he had a hard time trying to just catch me, trying to land something, like desperation building in his eyes, and as I'm just like picking away at him. That's and like and that felt great to see.
oh yeah, I bet it did because you know in that first round, like I said, I mean he was throwing some serious heat at you. I mean he was winding up on some of those big shots, and you know he caught you with a couple of things there early. I imagine it had to feel pretty good, you know, surviving that first round, those first initial onslaughts, and
Yeah,
then
weather the storm with him. He's a tough one.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, and you know, I mean, to give credit to him, I mean, you know, it was his debut. You know, I mean, he fought pretty well those first couple of rounds in his own right, but man, you just you really stuck to it and picked him apart. And I mean, you even wobbled him with another just fucking smooth head kick there at like the end of round one. You know, and I knew watching that I was like, oh man, this guy he's in for a long fight.
Yeah, I'm like, and look, in this fight, I know I was being kind of looked over. And since he comes from Charles Oliveira's camp, they're like, yeah, this kid is a prospect. This kid's gonna be trouble. And I'm like, nah. He's like, gotta watch out for me. I'm the trouble.
Yeah, yeah, they hyped him up pretty good before the fight. You know, I mean, they really painted him out to be this, you know, this future prospect in the UFC. And you know, maybe he will be right, but
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like you came in there and you just put the stamp on that real quickly. You were like, absolutely not. This is my time. I'm the prospect.
Yeah. It's like it's like I've been here. Like this was my eighth UFC fight. I'm like, I'm like, nah, it's not happening. Not here.
Yeah, well, you know, what do you think is next for you after such an impressive win like that? Do you have any opponents in mind? What are you thinking?
I don't have any opponents in mind. Like I'm actually trying to hopefully fight again end of July, August, like around there.
Mhm.
And then probably so then it gives me time to like recover then after that fight and then hopefully get another one before the year ends. But I think my after my loss to Song Yadong, it set me back. And then I have to fight a person doing the UFC debut. So it's like I gotta build back up. But I think after that kind of performance in that fight, I think the next step would be just a fight that'll get me closer to the top 15.
Oh, right, right, definitely. You know, I want to wrap up here soon, but before we do, I'd like to talk about UFC 274. Did you watch any of those fights at all? Did you watch the pay-per-view?
Oh yeah, like I watched those fights were insane. Um, yeah, it's like I it sucks that the Cowboy fight didn't happen because I love Cowboy Cerrone.
Oh yeah.
He's It sucks that he got like food poisoning, and so I was looking forward to that fight. And then the Michael Chandler fight. That was
Holy
just
shit, dude. That front kick was crazy.
he just hit him with the Anderson Silva.
Dude, it
But
was
I feel bad
even
for Tony though, because I mean I know Tony. Tony said he wanted to go in there and have fun, but he just had a big chip on his shoulder with all the stuff he was saying, and like it sucks that that now he lost this fight and he lost it in that fashion.
right.
So, like I just
Yeah.
hope he's okay though, because after that Gagey fight, where he took just like so much damage, and now he gets knocked out like that, like I just hope he's okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was one of those fights where you kind of got to see the duality of being an MMA fan, because that front kick was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it just was. I mean, it was a hell of a front kick. The way, the way that Tony fell to the mat afterwards, Michael Chandler flipping off the cage like 3, 4 times, however many times he did those flips. And then
He
his
pushed
call
the
out.
ref. He pushed the cut, man. I was like, "Yo, get out of my way. I'm gonna do another flip."
Yeah, he was like, "Wait a minute, brother. I've got to get in a couple more flips." And so it was really cool to see. And then Chandler on the mic after a win is next to none. I mean, he always cuts these awesome promos after he wins. But if you've been watching MMA a long time, like I have and like you have, you hate to see somebody like Tony Ferguson lose in that fashion, because I mean he's a killer, and he looked good, in the first round. He looked pretty good, but man, to lose it, so quickly in the second round with a devastating knockout like that, his fourth loss in a row, like you said, I think we were all just, when we were watching the Justin Gaethje fight, I think we were all just, begging for that fight to end.
Hmm.
Nobody wants to see him go through that kind of punishment, and it's kind of hard to reconcile these recent losses of his with the fact that he was on that super impressive win streak that he was on for what, like 6, 7 years. He didn't lose a single fight in the UFC.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to even it was an impossible to imagine at that time that he would rack up the losses that he had. I know a lot of people were hoping that he would get a step down, in competition, a little bit of there's not really any tune-up fights in the UFC, but losing 3 in a row and then fighting Michael Chandler is definitely not a step down in competition.
Not at all.
No, and then the main event, there was all the, there was all the controversy about the weight surrounding it, and I feel like that kind of became the narrative of the fight. But once that fight started, man, it was crazy from beginning to end. All 3 minutes of it, or however long that fight lasted, it was back and forth, crazy. I mean,
Oh my god! And then the thing is, like I get Charles had that whole the whole weight thing with the scale and stuff, and that guy went in with a bigger reason to win. He was
right,
like, "I'm gonna show you guys why I'm the champion."
right, yeah. I think he said after the fight, he was like, the lightweight champ has a name, and it's Charles Oliveira. So he's, I mean, he's obviously going to be in the next title fight, whoever it's against. And he definitely deserves it. I mean, he's really putting together a resume, man. You
Yeah,
know,
I
I,
think. Do you think they'll put they'll make him fight? Will he fight Connor or Islam?
I th- the MMA purist in me wants to see him fight Islam, I feel
Yeah,
like,
he's due for it.
yeah, I feel like it's his time. He deserves the shot. Habib tweeted it the other day, said that that's kind of the only fight that makes sense. And I kind of think it is. But
Yeah,
you can't really blame anyone for wanting to fight Conor McGregor. And
they want to get paid. That's their
yeah,
payday.
that big Conor McGregor payday, man. I won't ever fault anybody for wanting one of those. But I would really love to see him fight Islam. I mean, you've got two people there. I mean, both the grappling with both of them is just it is wild. I mean, I think it would be one of the best grappling matchups that we've seen in a while, and it's hard to even think about who would come on top, in those exchanges.
Hmm. I just think like Oliveira just has so many more ways to win.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. And everyone always talks about his grappling, like they should. Don't get it wrong, but like he knocked down Gaethje to set up that rear naked choke. It's not
Yeah,
like he, took him down and smothered him with his wrestling and then submitted him. I mean, he knocked him down. He's got hands too, man. Everyone talks about the submissions because they are dangerous, but he can put your lights out too.
yeah,
I mean, he had his fight, with Michael Chandler was pretty similar. And his fight with Poirier was similar too. He faced a little adversity early on. He got knocked down in the first round against all three of those guys, but he's able to just. It's like when he gets knocked down, he really wakes up. You know,
yeah,
it's something like that because he got rocked in all of those early fights, but he was still able to come around and knock out Chandler, submit Poirier and Gaethje, and every second of those fights was crazy. No, I don't think anyone's ever accused Charles Oliveira of putting on a boring fight.
yep. That dude's just been on it.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about the lightweight situation? Do you want to see Oliveira fight Islam next?
I definitely want to see Oliveira fight Islam. I think like look, this guy like you see how he is on his back. You see how he is standing. Like he's he's the type of like person who's he's seen it all through his journey.
Right.
He's gone through his peaks and valleys, and he became the champion for a reason. And I think if you put him now for the new vacant title against Islam, I feel like he is the person that you're looking to give Makachev that kind of fight.
Right. Because Oliveira would be, a pretty big step up in competition for Islam, really see if he belongs in that, in that championship conversation. I
Yeah,
think I think a question a lot of people are asking too is if Oliveira beats Islam, do you rank him as a greater lightweight of all time than Habib?
absolutely. Like
Yeah,
he went in like he's going in there. He's putting pretty much the mini Khabib away.
right. Yeah, and I think they've got some, their resumes are kind of similar. There's some different names in there, but they both beat Poirier, they both beat Gaethje. I think if Oliveira goes out there and beats Islam, especially if he does it, and he does it early, like he did with Gaethje. I mean, I think you've got to put him, at the top of that list or at least above Habib. I really do.
Yeah,
And then that's just considering his most recent wins. I mean, that guy's been fighting in the UFC forever. If you look at all of the fights that he's had in the UFC, I think you've got to give it to him.
yeah, it's freaking. He's he's you know what? I feel like if Oliveira goes puts a stamp on like Islam like that, he's accomplished more than Khabib did.
Oh yeah, yeah, I completely agree. Well, listen, man, I've got to wrap it up here. I've got another thing going on at 5, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about your journey to the UFC and some of the fights that have happened over the weekend. I really do appreciate it. And just before we close out, do you have anything that you want to promote? Any sponsors you want to shout out? Anything like that at all?
I'm just always, like Team Tiger Showman's, my coaches, the Showman's, my boxing coach Ray, my first original instructor, um, Brian Godoffer, who's literally been like a father in me through all this, and just everyone who follows my journey, and my whole family, all my supporters. So, love it. Thank you guys. Love them all.
Oh yeah, I really appreciate it, man. Thank you for
Hey,
coming
thank you
on the
for having
show.
me, brother.
Man, I'll have you back anytime. Just hit me up. That was my conversation with UFC Bantamweight prospect Julio Arce. You too. I really enjoyed hearing about his journey to the UFC and the perseverance that required. I mean, hearing him talk about how depressed he was after all the different roadblocks in his career was pretty inspiring. If you enjoyed our conversation, be sure to follow Bonfire Brief Pod on Twitter for future episodes, and be sure to follow Julio Arce too. His ascension to the top is something you won't want to miss. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.